Hey, all you people out there, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Sven Hungstrom, and today, the first of our Fractured Space Revival reviews, it's going to be the Zarek Furion. Now, as I promised in the first video I uploaded on this channel since I came back, there's no script, because I figured that I need to do this in the old spirit of my previous reviews, which didn't have any scripts or anything. But this time there's actually going to be some editing, so that's nice. There'll be clips of gameplay sprinkled throughout this review, and then there'll be sort of a full replay at the end that we can all sit back and appreciate. Sort of. It'll be cut up into examples of what the Furion is good for, which, thankfully, the Furion is probably the simplest ship in this game. It's one of, if not the simplest, attack ships in the entire game. The best way, if I was to describe this in like one sentence, is that you are a sentient sledgehammer that has a fully automatic high-explosive machine gun, a flamethrower, and pretty much every tool that you need to deal with any ship. Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. The upsides of the Furion, of course, are its ridiculous amount of weapons that deal pretty good damage. I mean, the AUG cannon, which is its primary, deals ridiculous damage at close range, but it also has a pretty long range of 11,000 meters for the optimal range. Its missiles all fire out of the front of the ship. It fires 12 missiles, which is a lot for an attack ship, and they all come out of the front, meaning that there's no spread. So something like the destroyer fires one missile on each of the points of the compass, so north, south, east, west, and then, northeast, northwest, southwest, southeast. This thing fires all of them out of the front. And let's go ahead and get into the more detailed camera so I can show you. Hopefully my cursor is being captured. If not, just pretend like it is. Also, I know that the Shadowplay icon is down in the bottom corner. That's because this game is for some reason running in borderless window, even though I have it set to full screen. I don't know why that's the case, but then again, this is a weird version of the game that isn't technically officially supported, so we're just going to go with it. So, the Furion. Where are all the weapons located? What are all the weapons, actually, because we should probably go over that first. And how good is this thing at doing what it does? And what it does is killing everything that moves. It's probably my favorite ship in the entire game. For the simple fact of you don't really think when you're playing the Furion. I mean, there is some thought that goes into your positioning. There's a lot of thinking you have to do about which targets to attack. Is that target worth going after? But really, it's so simple that it might as well... Honestly, I recommend everybody to try the Furion at least once. Even if you're not a fan of ships like this, because this ship is amongst the crowd that has directionally more powerful armaments. So you see these 4 turrets at the front. These are your AUG cannons, your primary weapons. These guys, you can fire 4 turrets, and they kind of go sequentially. We look at the stats. The AUG cannon fires at 0.23... Well, it takes 0.23 seconds in between each shot. Now that's at the maximum amount of turrets firing. So you basically fire 4 shots in a little under a second, if you have it in the frontal arc of the ship. Now, unfortunately, what I can't do in this version of the game is I can't go into the test range to show you how these weapons and all the systems of the ship work in real time, because going into the firing range immediately just crashes the game. So that's kind of a drag, but I should have enough footage to put in the background of various things happening, although, as you've probably already seen, the Furion kind of does everything at once, and that's by design. You kind of throw everything the ship has at a singular target until it's dead. The AUG cannon is your primary source of damage. It's one of your longest range options besides your missiles, but long-range missiles aren't that great. They're annoying, but they're not great at dealing damage. So the AUG cannon is going to be your primary damage dealer. It has good damage, it has a good rate of fire, it has a slight AoE effect as far as I can tell, or the projectiles are just so huge that you can miss by a good amount and it still counts as hitting the enemy that you're shooting at. The only problem with the AUG cannon is that the directional arcs of this thing aren't great. So the actual firing arcs to get the full 4 turrets shooting and to get the maximum rate of fire aren't that much further than maybe a 90-degree arc in front of you. If that. Any farther than 90 degrees, and it'd be, so 45 to each side. Any more than that, and you'd probably be stretching it. I'd probably say it's less than 45 to each side. Up and down, you're probably looking at about maybe a 30-degree angle up and down. It's not that much either. And there are some places on this ship where only one turret will be able to fire. So most of the firing arcs, aside from that initial cone of, 30 degrees up and down and 45 degrees left and right, there is a lot of firing zones on this ship where only 2 of the turrets will be able to fire, which cuts your rate of fire in half. So instead of firing one shot every 0.23 seconds, you now fire a shot every 0.46 seconds. Which isn't terrible for dealing with, low health targets. But the kind of targets that you can go after in the Furion, you need all 4 of those turrets firing. You just do. Because the only thing that the Furion has going for it over something like a Destroyer or a Gladiator is that you pump out so much damage that it's difficult to survive, regardless of what ship you're in and regardless of how much health you have. Your defense in the Furion is pretty meaningless. Your armor layout is not great. Your armor health isn't great. And when you level the ship up, you also don't get very much more armor at all. So defense is not where the Furion shines. It does, however, have 9,000 health, which is a pretty standard amount for medium attack ships such as the Furion. Let's say if you compare it to the Brawler. Brawler also has 9,000 health. Let's just go through. I wish that the scroll wheel worked. You can sometimes go through the ship list with the scroll wheel, but sometimes you just can't. The Displacer has 9,000. The Enforcer, I believe, has... The Enforcer has 9,000. The only ships that I can really think of that have more off the top of my head are the Hunter, which have 10,500, and the Interceptor, which has 10,000. But those ships have other survivability aspects, like the Interceptor is really fast and maneuverable, and the Hunter has its blink. The Furion doesn't really have a lot of extra survivability on top of that. The Displacer has long range, the Brawler basically just kills everything in front of it, it also has the Concuss Pulse. The Furion doesn't have anything that is very easy to use to get out of danger. It does have a boost. It's a bad boost. It's really only useful for either getting into trouble or getting out of trouble, and I find that most of the time I'm using it to get out of trouble. But it doesn't last very long, at only 6 seconds. It doubles your max speed, and it has a 2-minute cooldown base. Considering that your base speed is already 600, which is pretty fast, I have a spreadsheet. Hang on, let me pull it up. I have a spreadsheet over here, just that way I can compare all the stats. Compared to the Brawler is 578, the Displacer is 588, the Enforcer is 599, but that one's pretty fast. And also, it has a blink, so it's much more maneuverable. You have stuff like the Hunter, which only goes 494 base, but that also has its blink, and with a range blink it can go over, I believe, 10 kilometers? Or it's 9,000 meters, I believe, if you take the range blink, which I usually do. Yeah, it's 9,000 meters. The Furion doesn't really have that, and that boost, while it does double your speed, it doesn't double it instantly. There's about a second, maybe a second and a half, right when you activate the boost, that your ship has to accelerate up to that top speed. And another thing that does not do any favors for the defense of the Furion is that this ship is actually not small. It's pretty big. If you look at the max, or the length, it's the max length. Yeah, the ship can actually grow and shrink. No, the length of the ship is 1327 meters. Compared to something like the Hunter, it's 200. The Hunter is 200 meters shorter. The Enforcer is a lot shorter, almost pretty much 400 meters shorter, and the Brawler is about 300 meters shorter. It's also a very tall target, which you don't really think about that, but considering that the ship's weapons are all focused towards the front, that's a pretty big target to shoot at. And also the missile launchers on the side are also a big target as well. And this thing's top profile and its bottom profile are huge. You have all these engines to shoot at down here and up here, and your top and bottom armor layout is less than ideal to be taking damage. Let's just put it that way. Alright, got a little distracted, so there'll probably be a cut right there, but that's okay. Excuse me. It's a little bit cold in my house at the moment. But now we're going to come to one of the best things about this ship, and probably one of the best things in the entire game. They decided to give a ship in this game a flamethrower. Now, it's not called a flamethrower because fire doesn't work in space. But it's a plasma thrower. But it might as well be a flamethrower. That's basically what this is. It's a flamethrower, okay? It's just a flamethrower. It might be called something different, but it's a flamethrower. This thing does insane amounts of damage, very sustained damage in close range, and close range is 6,000 meters. It doesn't have any damage fall off. The optimum range is from 6,000 meters to point blank range, and the damage is 6 damage applied over 3 seconds, and it does that 6 damage every 0.4 seconds. You can fire this thing, get it, because it's a flame, anyway. You can fire this thing for 8 seconds in total, from empty to full, because this thing can overheat. If you do manage to overheat, it'll take 15 seconds to fully cool down. It doesn't use any sort of other cooldowns. To go from halfway overheated to no heat at all, I haven't been able to test that exactly, but it takes less time than half of 15 seconds. So it's always better to just let it cool down on its own without overheating the plasma thrower. Now, another good thing is that I'll be putting over footage, and I'll probably put a little note on screen somewhere if I find it. That base damage of 6 plasma damage over 3 seconds every 0.4 seconds, that's not a single stack. There are multiple procs that you can get of that plasma damage on a single target. And, of course, you're holding the plasma thrower on them for a good amount of time, up to 8 seconds. So, that's a lot of plasma damage. An interesting thing as well is that the plasma thrower, and any plasma damage that you deal afterwards, completely ignores armor. So if you're targeting the most well-armored ship in the game, which is probably either the Colossus, the Destroyer, Leviathan, Centurion, Aegis, or the Leviathan, it doesn't matter. You're going to be doing the same exact damage to them as you would something like an Equalizer or a Disruptor. Target's armor doesn't matter. So which means you're going to be dealing 100% consistent damage, unless they have some sort of universal damage reduction ability on them. You're going to be doing the same damage to everybody. Now, this is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because, yes, you'll be doing a lot of damage to smaller ships, and it's very consistent damage at close range, but against larger ships, this damage is going to be not negligible, but it's not going to be as noticeable. But it's very useful for just getting through the enemy's armor. Well, not getting through it, but damaging them through the armor. It doesn't matter how much armor they have, you're going to just be melting through it. Next on the list of abilities, we have the missiles. Now, these missiles are... they're okay. They're good for what the Furion's intended range is, which is in range of the plasma thrower, which is 6,000 meters and closer. These missiles have a very slow speed. 4,000 meters per second for missiles is pretty slow. You do fire 12 of them, and they do 87 damage a pop base, and they have a 20-second cooldown, which is pretty standard for missiles of this type. However, one thing that is very important, as I mentioned before, is that they all fire out of the front of the ship. You can see the missile launchers kind of nestled into these wings right there. There's 6 right there, and there's 6 right there. And they fire incrementally, so it's left, right, left, right, left, right, until all 12 of them have fired. And they go at full speed pretty much immediately after they're fired. Some missiles in this game have a delay from when you fire them to them activating their booster engines and then flying towards the target. These pretty much reach full speed immediately, and if you are within range of the plasma thrower when you fire these missiles, they pretty much have no travel time. They travel at 4,000 meters per second, they reach full speed pretty much immediately. These missiles are going to be hitting a target in pretty much a little over a second when you fire them within range of the plasma thrower. Use these to just supplement your damage, and if you overwhelm them because, hey, you're right next to them, your point defense will kind of try to target fighters, bombers, missiles, all those sorts of things. But if you're close to a target and they activate their point defense, You're going to be distracting their point defense just as much as the missiles are, which will give your missiles a better chance to get through and deal their damage, which is not insignificant. 87 damage per missile. Let's just double check to see. The Hunter's missiles. I went too far. No, I didn't go far enough. There it is. The Hunter's missiles. See, these are really slow. And they also... But they do deal more damage, but you also have 4 less of them. And these missiles fire... I've never understood why the missiles don't render, but the missile launchers are pretty much attached right here, on the top of the ship, right behind these giant blink engines. So, I went too far again. There we go. Furion's missiles are very specialized in what it does. And finally, we come to another one of the best things about this ship, and really what cements it as one of the best large ship killers in the game. The Corrode drones. Now, these corrosion drones deal no actual hull damage. Never mind, it says literally right there that they do hull damage. But the hull damage is not the main part of why these drones are good. Except it does help you. It does disrupt base healing, so if somebody is trying to retreat behind one of the forward stations or trying to hide in their home base, it does disrupt healing from stations. But the main draw of these is that these 8 drones each deal 50 damage per tick. Now, I don't know how fast these ticks are, but they corrode armor for 30 seconds. Now, that might seem amazing. Wow, that corrodes armor, but what face does it corrode? All of them. Just all of them. If you let these drones run their course, you can strip armor completely, and then some, from most light ships in the game, and with extra damage from your primary weapons, you can strip any large ship within seconds. They deal incredible amounts of armor damage. The only problem is that they are susceptible to point defense, they are susceptible to Colossus flak rounds, Paragon flak rounds, fighters, detect pulses, or any kind of pulse attack that deals damage to squadrons of missiles, plasma fields, plasma buoys. Anything that can deal with drones and missiles normally will be able to deal with these, and that's one of your best counters against these. But if you don't have access to any of these counters, or your team can't use those counters on these drones to help you out, then you're kind of screwed, because the Furion is then going to have his way with you. And as you've probably seen in the clips in the background, if you let the Furion have his way with you, you're not going to be around for very long. But enough of the actual mechanics, well, enough of like just the spreadsheet numbers. How does this thing actually perform in combat? Like, what should you strive for the Furion? Well, you just shoot, and you burn, and you just blast away. There's no real other tips I need to give you. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in the background. There are some things you need to keep in mind, though. Your defense is absolutely pitiful. You can't go into a toe-to-toe fight with more than one ship and expect to walk away. You can win 2-on-1 engagements if one of the two is a healing ship, and you deal with them first, but then you're letting an attack ship or a larger ship deal with you and shoot at you for free, while the healing ship is distracting you. Really, the Furion excels at dealing with isolated targets one-on-one, because it has enough damage output, it has enough survivability, just enough survivability, to deal with any single target or any single other ship in this game. I would honestly take a Furion over anything else in this game if it's a one-on-one engagement. There are some other ships that can give the Furion trouble, for example, Enforcers. Enforcers definitely give this thing trouble because they're maneuverable enough and they deal a lot of damage. Anything that can run, like a Hunter or a Displacer. Displacers are especially bad targets for Furions because they can keep you at a distance and run away and force you to stay away with all their displacement abilities. They are good at dealing with large ships, so long as those large ships are not a Leviathan and it's facing you, and not a destroyer if you are caught within its broadside, because the destroyer outranges you by like 2-fold. So don't be an idiot and rush towards a destroyer while he can shoot at you. The Colossus, easy target. Honestly, you completely destroy a Colossus in a one-on-one fight. He just doesn't deal enough damage to kill you before you can kill him. And Leviathan, as long as he's not facing you and he can use his fusion beam, you're pretty much okay. It'll be close because he does deal a lot of damage and his missiles are very tough and deal also a lot of damage. But you should be okay, so long as you play your cards right. And then the Aegis, yeah, no. The Aegis has a lot of good defense, but if it's on its own, you're going to be able to outdamage him no problem. So, yeah. And then, of course, I could go through all the other ships, but really, the Furion is one of the best anti-large ship killers in the game. So, what crew should you use on it? Because that is an important factor to take into account when looking at a Furion. Or any ship, really. Now, I'll show you my crew, but remember I've been out of the game for quite a while. Let's go back in. There we go. Yes, I do have a crew for every single ship, just because I feel like specializing is a little bit better. So what stats do I prioritize for the Furion over anything else? Well, I picked Jingles as my commander because attack damage and damage reduction with a little bit of capture rate, because you're going to be in close range. Maneuvering and turn rate, very important for keeping your front towards enemy at all times. Fire rate and turret traverse. More fire rate more than turret traverse because you're going to be turning the entire ship more than anything to try and keep them in front of you, so fire rate is more important in this case. Armor strength and forward thrust, I kind of have a mix between the two, because armor strength is really nice, and forward thrust is also really nice for chasing down enemies. And then squad cooldown and squad survival is a mix, because you want your Corrode drones to stay alive, and you want them to be back in the fight faster. Now I could make a very good argument, a lot of people could probably make a very good argument, that you would actually want to have a repair specialist on this. I have one on my Hunter because of the broken armor damage trait. Because you're going to lose your frontal armor, you're going to lose a lot of your armor because you just don't have a lot of it anyway. Taking less damage from the sections of your ship that have no armor is very beneficial. But I like to prioritize more aggressive play with the Furion because you're either going to kill whatever is in front of you and attacking you, or you're going to go down with them. Or you're going to just go down because you're getting outnumbered and overwhelmed. You play hard and loose with the Furion is what I'm trying to say. You don't really care. You live fast, die young, leave a good-looking corpse. And that's basically it. The Furion is one of the simplest ships in this entire game. And that's why it's one of my favorite ships in the entire game. But you still need to think. You can't be a brainless fool and just rush in and try and kill everything, because it's not going to work. However, if there's a single ship that's all kind of by itself, yeah, pretty much every ship in the game needs to be worried about seeing a Furion bearing down on it. And that is about it, I think. Yeah. Damn. That was actually pretty good. Like, with no script, I am very impressed. Anyway, yeah, that's the Furion. It's one of my favorite ships in the game. It's one of the simplest ships. It's one of the most devastating. And it's just really, honestly great. It's the only ship in this game that has this directional firing characteristic that I appreciate, besides something like the Interceptor. But this thing just does so much damage that it's worth it having. It needs that limitation because of all these other things that it has. You know, it has a really powerful main weapon, and the plasma throwers, and the missiles, and the Corrode drones. So it's ridiculous. The only primary weapon system in this game I can confidently say does more overall damage and is more flexible is probably the Brawler. The Brawler definitely does more damage, but it doesn't have anywhere near the range. Which is why the Furion is better than the Brawler in most cases, because you'll just be doing more damage at more range. You know, the Brawler's optimal range is horrible. Its optimal range is 2,500 meters. So the Furion can deal max damage to a Brawler at much farther ranges than the Brawler can deal with the Furion. And even in their optimum ranges, the Furion does more damage because it has more damage types. So, yeah, the Furion is great. What more can I say? Anyway, that will pretty much do it for this video. Man, that was... I actually like, got into this review. I was having a lot of fun just like trying to figure out what to say and doing all this stuff, and you know, I'm sure I'm gonna have fun making all the notes of things that I missed. But yeah, that's about it really. I want to thank all of you for watching these videos. You know, If you're one of my old subscribers, or if you remember who I was even, because it's been a few years, you know, welcome back. And I am very happy to be doing videos about Fractured Space again. And they're really easy to do because no script. I can basically just record whatever I want and edit it together later. So I hope that you all will enjoy these videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. And don't know what's going to be next. There's plenty to choose from. I have a lot of footage of a lot of different ships. I basically have footage of all the ships in the game except for weird ones like the Equalizer, which I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the Equalizer. I might have to get real players to use the Equalizer because you kind of need them. And like stuff like the Aegis, you know, it's a fun ship, but you kind of need extra help. And oh man, especially the Centurion. Oh, the Centurion. Playing with bots with the Centurion is it's a fool's errand, but we'll get to that. But again, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.